Okay, good morning, everyone. So we were looking at the Rashba's diuk in our sugya that once one has taken the Muktza in one's hand, one can put it wherever one wishes to do so. By request, I added much fuller sources around this topic, so that those who wish to do so can learn that inside. But please don't worry about the sources if they're a little overwhelming. This is a little bit off sugya in the sense that really we're just learning one line in the Gemara in which the Gemara says that asks how you can tidy the table of the ka'oros according to Rabba's understanding of Nechemia, and the Gemara answers graf shel rei, but it's mavur in the sugya that if we don't go like Rabba in Reb Nechemia, you can do so because of tzorech makomo, because you need to clear the space. And the Rashba is medayik from that means you can tidy up properly and put the plates away. And from that he's medayik that means that you don't have to put them down as soon as you've literally just moved them, literally away from the table. But you can put them down in a convenient spot. And out of that emerges, and there are a couple of other sugyas that also indicate such ideas, but we're not going to go through these other sugyas. Out of that emerges an important halachic principle that once you pick up Muktza, in certain circumstances, you don't need to immediately put it down, but you can carry on carrying it. You can carry on being metaltel the Muktza, and this is very important halacha l'maisa, and that's why we're focusing on it, even though in a sense it's a little bit off the duff and only a side feature of the sugya. So the sources are for those who want to make an eon of this topic, but really we are going to move on from this and move back to the pshat of the sugya. So I just put the full sources there for those who want to be mine in it. What I'd like really to do today, just to finish off this topic, is just look at the halachic debate around the parameters of this heter. How far does this extend? And secondly, what this debate reveals about, or let's say the other way around, why is there this halacha? Why is it that once you've picked something up, you don't have to put it down immediately? And based upon the ways of explaining it, A, it will give us different ways of looking at Muktza, and B, it will explain why there's machlokas about the parameters of the heter. So how you understand the logic behind the heter, or the svara behind the heter, will also affect to what degree you think the heter applies. So, yeah.
You said what's that structure? One is moving, the other is using.
Yes.
All the examples we looked at here, I think have been about moving.
Yes.
Are we therefore excluding you start using something you shouldn't have? And if you find out it's not addressing the question, do you have to get up and use it in order to continue?
Okay, that's a very, very, very interesting question. It's not one I'd thought about, so I'll just share preliminary thoughts off the top of my head. So Gary's question is, if I'm using something be'issa, can I continue using it? Or would the same svara apply? So let's just go through a number of scenarios. First of all, if I've picked something up, I can carry on moving it, let's say in some cases. Would I be able to also use it since I've anyway picked it up? Well, if it's a kli melachot l'issa and I want to use it for heter, then I would be allowed to do so because of tzorech gufay. But if it's a kli melachot l'issa and I've picked it up, then I'm getting a bit of interference here. But if it's a kli melachot l'issa, would I be, or let's say not kli melachot l'issa, if it's a muktza machmas gufay, for example, a stone which I picked up, since I've anyway picked it up, would I be allowed to use it? I think the answer would be no, because shifting from holding or moving to using would be a fresh engagement with Muktza. The longest of being able to carry on moving it is going to be somewhere in the ballpark, vaguely speaking. We'll have to fine-tune this of, since I'm anyway moving, I can carry on moving it. But using it would be a new engagement. In a minute, I'll get to your question, but your question triggered that thought in my mind. Yes.
That log is falling down.
Yes.
You're not allowed to use it.
Yes.
The moment you discover
yes, I'll come to that. Yes, yeah. So scenario number one triggered by Gary's question is, if I'm holding something and moving it, can I shift to using it? Well, if it's a Muktza kli melachot l'issa LeTsorech, of course. But if it's a Muktza machmas gufay, a stone, which I can't use on Shabbos for any reason, I don't think you would, because that's a new engagement. If I'm sitting on a log, I'm using a log, can I continue to use it? Preliminary thought, no. because the logic of moving something is I'm already moving it, and somehow this is a continuation of the movement, and we'll fine-tune that svara again. Whereas in the case of using it, I mean, every moment of using is an engagement with Muktza. The whole londus of the prohibition of using is an ongoing engagement with the Muktza. It seems to me, on preliminary thought, that every moment of engagement is a refreshed interaction with the Muktza, and therefore that would be problematic. But I'm just throwing this off the top of my head. I've not thought about your question, and I don't know if the post can discuss it. I didn't see any post can discuss it, but my thought is that would certainly be asked by me. I may be wrong. But it's a very, very interesting question. Yes.
Is it surprising that we need a Maharshal's Heta to allow ourselves to move a Kolish Menachel Heta all the way to the sink, rather than just off the table? Previously, we had a discussion about Kolish Menachel Heta, like, are you allowed to fiddle with it, for example? Are you allowed to move it for no reason whatsoever? And that was about as far as we seem to be worried about Kolish Menachel Heta. Now we're actually needing to have a proper heta to be allowed to move the Kolish Menachel Heta more than just a little bit.
It's again a good point. You see in the Rashba, the Rashba was making a point which is extendable to any halacha, but you see in the Rashba that the Rashba's point is as follows: that when you have a heta of being allowed to move something, LeTsorech mekomai, once it's in your hands, you can carry on moving it. That's the Rashba's point. Now he gets that from the Gemara, because the Gemara says that the only reason you're allowed to move these chaburahs is because of tzorech mekomai. Because the Gemara is asking on Rabbah, who says you can't move anything, you can't move the tzorech mekomai according to Rabbi Nechemia. How can you clear the chaburahs? Which is mashma according to Rabbah that you can move the tzorech mekomai, you can move it however you want. Now, what is the issa of, according to Rava, why do you need to come onto the heta of tzorech mekomai according to Rava in Rabbi Nechemia? The answer is because that's Rabbi Nechemia's view, that even a kli shemalachto leheta can only be moved l'tzorech tashmisha, l'tzorech tashmish hamiyachad lo. So Nechemia's view is you can only move a kli shemalachto leheta l'tzorech tashmisha, and Rava says, okay, but that even includes tzorech mekomai. On that, the Rashba proves once you take it to tzorech mekomai, you can move it however much you want. Now, what's the basis of Rabbi Nechemia's view? Why does Rabbi Nechemia have such a tight view of kli shemalachto leheta? So we said two possibilities: either because he has a very tight definition of Muktza, of what things are muchen for, or because of Gezeres Nechemia. It gets back to Gezeres Nechemia. So however you explain Reb Nechemia, the fact is you need a het of tzorech mekomai to move garas, and the fact is, says the Rashba, you can extend it to putting it down wherever you want. That's in the Gemara. In our halacha, in our version of Nechemia, or in our version of halacha, we don't paskin like Reb Nechemia, and therefore you don't need a het of tzorech mekomai for ksheep and after leheta. And we believe that Nechemia is unraveled so that you can move kalim for any tzorech and only not for no tzorech klal. You can either move them for michama l'tel. So in that version, I don't think there's any evidence that you need the chiddush of the Rashba.
When the Maharsha says the Elah, it's in the second last time, the Elah, the Robber, how he takes the hit myself, are you saying that is the Robber and
Exactly, yes, because that's going on the Yosef of Yosef of Safar, Yosef Kami, the Rabba Libra of Nechemia. Yes, so the question is Rabba Libra of Nechemia. So yeah. Yeah. Sorry, yes, yeah.
And at the end, the Rabba doesn't say.
So that's the maths of it. We've just said the machlokas Rabba and Rava in the explanation of Nechemia. Yeah, etc. Yeah. I was asked by, I think, Adam to talk about an alignment between the two Ravas. I've evaded doing that partly because I need to sort out my own thinking, and there's a lot further to go. But yeah, but here we can be simple. We're just going in Rava Libra of Nechemia.
So I didn't quite understand the chiluk. You said that when you're sitting on something, you may not be able to carry on because it's a further engagement with Muktza. So why isn't that the case when you're already moving something, but why isn't there further engagement when you're carrying on moving it? What's the difference?
So we'll see the reasons why. What I'm going to say is let's put this on hold till we see the reasons why once you've picked something up, you can carry on moving it, and then we'll talk about that. And again, I'm throwing this off the top of my head. I have an intuition as a chiluk between engagement, where every moment of engagement is a renewed engagement, as opposed to tiltal where it isn't. But I really hadn't thought about Gary's point at all. So I don't want to overtime myself to something that needs thinking to do. But let's wait till we see the reasons why you can carry on moving things, and then we'll talk about this. So I think maybe I'll just share a few minutes worth of just Mara Makomis, just because we had the sources about Halacha and Maisa, what this translates into. The first source we had, if we find my source sheets. Yeah, the first source we had was really the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch in we had the Rashba, which is Madaik, which starts this whole fruitful area of halachic inquiry. We have a Shulchan Aruch in Shin Ches Sif Gimel, who explicitly says that once you take something, LeTsorech Gufay, you're allowed to move it. You can put it down wherever you want. In which case, it's mavua that that you can put something down wherever you want. You can carry on being metaltal it, as per the Rashba. Now the Rashba is, let's be clear, the Rashba is talking about a case where you picked up a keli, the heta LeTsorech Makomai, and he says you can carry on moving it. There's lots of ways we can ponder. How far can you extend it? Can you extend it to a case where you picked up something be'issa? Can we extend a case where you picked up something beheta but for a different allowance, not so makomo? Can we extend it to a case where you picked it up beheta because it was erev Shabbos and then you keep on holding it till Shabbos? There's all sorts of ways where we can find out how far does the Rashba extend. Marumokim number one was the Mogen Avram. He says even if you took something shokach v'notla biyodo rishayla taltaloi yosa, even if you forgot and picked something up accidentally, you can carry on moving it. So the Rashba extends it. The Mogen Avram, extends ahead to the Rashba to even where you picked up something be'issa. Is that only shokach where you picked it up b'shogeg, or would this even be where you picked it up b'mezid? Again, we don't see that in the Mogen Avram. I didn't print this source, but in the Shulchan Aruch of the Baal HaTanya, what we call the Shulchan Aruch Harav, he says even if you picked it up b'mezid, that would be the same. I printed here then the Mishnah Brura in Hilchos Yom Tov, Tov Kuf Vov Sikoten Chaf Ches Chaf Tes and Lamed, Tov Kuf Vov Sif Daled. Again, not my only idea. So I saw this referenced in the Likutz forum, in which he speaks about the case where you are. I think I mentioned it last week, but just to go through the sources, in which you're mafresh challah on Shabbos. So you bake on Yom Tov. I'm sorry, you're allowed to bake on Yom Tov. You bake a loaf of bread to eat, and you're mafresh challah from it. With the hafrasha, the challah that you're mafresh becomes Muktza, because you're mafresh it, and at the moment of hafrasha, it now becomes challah, which is tameya. And challah, which is tameya, is useless. That's why we burn our challah nowadays or dispose of it in some other way. There's nothing you can do with it, and therefore it becomes Muktza. So you took a piece of dough which is not Muktza, you break it off and declare challah, and therefore in your hands it becomes Muktza. And the Mishnah Berurah there seems to say that this is he says Mishum Dehi Asura B'Chilu V'Rodzin Shasuri B'Tiltul Mitanzeh the Afalpiken Miyad Keshkol Hashem Chalav Adani Biyot Kodim Shnicha V'Shar Taltul Lechol Makom Shiyitz V'Menicha Ad Sham Ad Cholamoid Asurfa. So the Mishnah Berurah says that you can put it down B'Chol Makom Shiyitz. So again, an important example of this. If you yes. Yes, we did have such Gemara. I don't need to go into halachas of hafrasha on Shabbos, but yes, yeah. The reason you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, I think we saw this, is because of Makkah Bepatish. I think we came across it when we were learning the halachas of Tikkun Moneh, that hafrashas trumas and maitros is deemed a drabanon of Makkah Bepatish. And we saw about what to do with chalas tutzlaretz and so on. Yeah. You're right. It could be nagaya even in on Shabbos. You're correct. There could be scenario. Good point. Yeah, could be scenarios where it's even nagaya on Shabbos. Yeah.
The case of Adam, just trying to think, is interesting. It might be more like Gary's first point, in that you're not moving when you take the challah. So you're presumably you take the challah. That's more of an engagement with the challah, and then you say you're allowed to then start moving. The other example, you're already moving and you're continuing.
The pashtus is that, though we will see those that disagree, that movement is not the point over here. The Issa Muktza is not about movement, it's about tiltal, taking it, having it in your hands. Having it in your hands is the sufficient engagement, and whether you're moving or not is irrelevant. That's the pashtus of things, though we will see those that disagree. Tiltal is about holding something. Yeah. I'll make a note of your point, though, because it is relevant to those things. I printed a very lengthy Evan Oizer. Evan Oizer, I don't think we've learned before in our Shiur, very, very important source. Again, not my own ideas here. I wish I knew every line of Evan Oizer. I don't, but brought in the LeTsorech that signposted it. He says that the heter of continuing to be metaltal of the Rashba is restricted to klish melachot leheter, where you took it LeTsorech makomai. But klish melachot leissa, even where it came to beheta, for example, he gives the scenario of eating a fruit where you're left with a stone in the middle of the fruit at the conclusion of eating. That's another example. You're allowed to take a peach in your hands and eat it, and at the end of the eating process, you'll be left with a stone, which is Muktza. What sort of Muktza? Muktza machmas gufay. Nonetheless, it bali yodo beheta, and he says you would have to throw it down straight away. You would not be allowed to take it. So he has a very narrow view of the Rashba. He says the Rashba is not giving a general heter. There's no general rule that once you've got Muktza in your hands, you can put it down where you want. It's a svara in LeTsorech makomai, that since you picked it up LeTsorech makomai, this is a continuation of the heter of LeTsorech makomai. It can't be extrapolated to other cases of Muktza. This is what the Evan Oizer says.
The stone field I thought could be under the
Yeah, it could be. But in a case where it's not, yeah, no heter of Gashuri. Let me just, in the interest of time, just think about what other sources we're going to look at. Another scenario that's mentioned, I think I printed it, I hope I printed it here. I did the one of Makbish Chala. Yes, on the final page, we had the, did I print it? I hope I printed it back. Kiss.
here beforehand.
Where did I print that? Source 4, fine, at the bottom thing. Misha Shokach Kisoy Olav B'Shabbos. So someone realized on Shabbos that they had their purse full of money on them. The context of this halacha is the previous halacha, which talks about a case where you find in Rosh Hashanah that you have the purse, and the Gemara, the Shulchan Aruch speaks about heter to carrying on Shabbos as long as you run with it, where there's no risk that you'll accidentally. So just very briefly, I don't want to go too far off subject. There is actually, this will be preparation for something that we'll say in a few minutes. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to carry in Rosh Hashanah or from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. The Issa of carrying on Shabbos is a three-part melacha. It's akira, where you lift it up. It's carrying it, either Dalet Amos or from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, and it's hanacha, placing it down in the final resting place. If on Shabbos you realize you are carrying a purse, in theory, if you carry on walking without stop till you arrive in the Rosh Hashanah and put it down somewhere where it's safe, you haven't done an akira because you're already walking. And all you're doing is the havara and hanacha, and therefore you would avoid being mechal Shabbos midaraisa, doing one of the melachos. However, midrabanan, you shouldn't do that unless you do a clear heka. For example, you just run with it, you don't walk with it, because we're afraid that with walking you'll end up stopping and you'll forget yourself. So you have to do it in an unusual way, and this is a special allowance Chazal made so as to avoid significant loss. Midrabanan, you can't rely on this heta normally because you can't do half a melacha. That's the first mission in Shabbos says you can't do an akira without a hanacha or a hanacha without an akira. Nonetheless, they were makel with a purse that you find in Shulchan. The next Sif in Shulchan Aruch then says that if it's your money inside the house where things are simpler, Misha Shachach Kisol of the Shabbos, Imhu Bebesa Yochalelech Im Lecheda Lahati Chagur Vilipal Shomlatznio. You're allowed to take it to your room and put it there. You're not carrying on Shabbos because it's indoors. However, you've got Muktza. How can you carry on moving the Muktza? The answer is that you're allowed to carry on moving it till you take it to a safe place. So you don't leave it in your dining room because you don't leave it in your dining room because it will. There's a risk of it getting lost or the like, and you're allowed to take it and move it into your house, into your safe space. So this is again another Maramakam on this. The Mr. Brewer comments on that the reason is Kivan Shamukta Biyota Yochalelech Im Lechol Makam Shiyitza. You're allowed to carry it because this is the top of page 2 because you're allowed to take it to wherever you want. And the Gon is Machmi on this, and then he says I am the Biur Halacha. And by the way, the Even Ozer was referenced by the Sharp Sion earlier. I should have mentioned this. The Even Ozer did signpost the Sharp. Yeah, in source 1 in the Sharp Sion Sivkot and Teskov, he references this Even Ozer that I quoted. Ostensibly, this Even Ozer is in contradiction. Ostensibly, this source is a clear source that even with Muktza Machmas Gufay, which money is bepashtus Muktza Machmas Gufay, it's not Klish Melachot Issa, it's Muktza Machmas Gufay, you're allowed to carry on holding it once you held it, and the Even Ozer says no, a purse is Klish Melachot Issa. So I'm just mentioning this as other Maramakomas around this Issa and the view of the Vilna Gaon. What I'd like to do just though in the time available is run through the reasons that are given for this heter, which are interesting in terms of understanding Muktza. So just to summarize what we've said so far, basically we've seen a Mogen Avram that extends the Rashba, not just a case where you pick something up, the heter of Tzorech Mekomo, and then you can carry on carrying it. He says even where you pick it up Be'issa, a Shulchan Aruch Harav understands that even where you pick it up Be'issa, B'mezid, and a Pashtus of a Shulchan Aruch, which extends the heter not only to a case of Tzorech Mekomo, but even other things like the purse scenario, like the Hafrashas Chala scenario. So there's no doubt the simplest reading of the Shulchan Aruch, if we don't worry about other readings that sort of limit it, the simplest reading of the Shulchan Aruch is that this is a heter muravachas, a broad heter that allows you to carry Muktza once it's in your hand, even beyond Klisha Melachta Issa LeTsorech Mekomo. Because the Shulchan Aruch seems to say in the case of the purse, which wasn't Tzorech Mekomo, you had it in your hand anyway, and even in the case of the Hafrashas Chala, where it's not again a heter of Tzorech Mekomo. So what's the basis of this heter? Why should there be a heter? So the Tzlach, which I've now printed inside, says the Issa of Tiltul is the Hascholas Tiltul. I hope I printed. I think I highlighted the patent lines. Yeah, it's a very, very long piece of Tzlach. He's dealing with other things, but I abbreviated it for you. And the Tzlach's keywords are the Kashubi Yodoi, the last line of the Tzlach, Afilu Shelo LeTsorech Klal, even though you've picked it up for no need at all, or there's no need to continue being metaltal, Mutzah LeTaltaloi, Kiven She'ein Shum Issa B'Tiltal Muktzah Rak Techilas Netilas B'Yodoi. When Chazal said Muktza is Asa, they said taking Muktza is Asa. Continuing to carry it around is not the Issa, and therefore once it's in your hands, there's nothing more to do. This was the basis of my response to Gary in terms of using something. Because in using something, there doesn't seem to be a logic to say that the tchila of using it is different to using it 5 minutes later. Using is a state of being. So why should there be a difference between using it at the beginning of using it or using it 5 minutes into it? Either way, I'm using it. With Tiltul, the Tzlach is saying a svara. The taking with it is my engagement. Once I've taken it, I've now connected it to myself. I'm merely continuing to do so. Therefore, he says that wasn't Issa. Whereas it seems to me intuitively, though I haven't given this a great deal of thought because I haven't thought about your question, that with Ishtamshus, with use, why should there be a difference? Is this distinction reasonable to people here where I'm coming from in this distinction? With use, there doesn't seem to be a difference between the first 5 seconds of use or the 51st 5 seconds of use. It's just a continued use. Whereas with Tiltul, the logic of the Zlach is it's the taking that's the problem, rather than the continued holding or movement of it. That's the problem. It's the act of taking that's the problem. With use, it's not the taking; it's the use that seems to be the issue. So I think that's a good answer to your question. The Or Sameach, which I also printed, takes us back to the very origins of Muktza. And we've never learned systematically the origins of Muktza. Why did Chazal create an Issa Muktza? We saw why Nechemia created his Issa Kalim. We saw that Nechemia wanted people not to engage with Kalim at all. But for us, that we do engage with Kalim, why should they create an Issa? We did see once upon a time a Beis Yosef that summarized some of the reasons. The Sameach says that based on the view of the Ravid, that the main reason for Muktza is Issa Hutzah. In other words, if you carry things around, you're liable to carry things in and out of Rishos Harabim, and therefore Chazal wanted to restrict you carrying things around. Therefore, says the Sameach, that at least according to this reason of Muktza, it may be that Muktza is only Osa when you have the three components of Hutzah. In other words, Akira, lifting up, Havara, movement, and Halacha. But if you're only doing an Akira, if you've already done an Akira Beheta, then there wouldn't be an Issa of continued Havara. And therefore, since you picked it up Beheta, there's no reason not to carry on. Sorry, so since it's already picked up, there's no reason not to carry on moving it because you haven't done you won't be able to do the continued Hotzah of Muktza. So, for example, if you pick something up on Erev Shabbos that's Muktza and keep it in your hands when Shabbos comes in, you're allowed to keep on carrying it because the Akira you did on Chol when that was Mutter to do. That's the svara of the Sameach. And that would only be that allowance would then only be if you picked it up Beheta. If you picked it up Be'issa, albeit accidentally, then of course the Issa Muktza would still apply because you've done an Akira Be'issa. But that's the view of the Sameach and the Ravid. Yeah. True, but that maybe the Issa of Muktza doesn't extend that far. In other words, Muktza is already a Drabanon, a Gezerah, so maybe you would make like a Gezerah. Yes. So again, just to summarize, Min HaTorah, the Issa of Hitzah is picking something up, moving it either across the border from Rosh Hashanah to Yachid or Daladamas in Rosh Hashanah and putting it down. That's the only Issa of Min HaTorah. Drabanon, we're not allowed to do even a part of this. But there's another Drabanon on Muktza which says even indoors, don't move Kalim unnecessarily. We're going to restrict your movement of Kalim. Says the Sameach, this restriction of movement of Kalim is only when it starts with an Akira. If it doesn't start with an Akira, and therefore by definition can't end up with the Deraisa Itzah, they didn't make the Issa, and therefore as long as you picked it up Beheta, the Issa Muktza wouldn't apply. If you picked it up Issa, the Issa would apply, but if you picked it up Beheta, for example on Erev Shabbos, the Issa wouldn't apply. This led me to, and that's what's funny because it's a nice point you're making, Jeffrey. Jeffrey asked about what happens if you pick something up, Issa, but you're standing still. Now the halacha is that there's two ways to do Akira, or halacha for that matter. One way is where you literally pick something off the ground. So in the street, you bend down, you pick up an object, you do Akira, and then you walk on. There's a second way of doing Akira, which is standing still with an object in your hands, and then you begin walking. That's also an Akira of the object from its place, because when you're standing still, the place of the object is where I am. When you move, the place of the object ceases to be where I am. That's the reason why, if accidentally you find yourself carrying something on Shabbos, you shouldn't stop in the Rosh Hashanah, because the stopping is a hanacha. So the Achronim ask on this Sameach, or point out, according to this Sameach, this heter to carry on carrying Muktza would only be while you're mid-movement. But if you stand still, that would be like hanacha, and then you would have to put the Muktza down. So if this was the basis of the heter in the Shulchan Aruch, that you're allowed to keep on carrying Muktza, let's say the dirty plate, you would have to make sure that you move from your dining room to your kitchen to put them down without stopping. It's a bit of a horror on the Sameach. It's a bit of a point. And I think, and we don't pass on like the Sameach, we don't pass on like the Ravid, we pass on. There's other reasons the Muktza and the Shulchan Aruch, as I said, gives a broader heter and so on. It's just interesting that according to this svara, you wouldn't be allowed to stop. And the Chora, this is where your point, Jeffrey, becomes very interesting, because you see from the case of Chala, not like this Sameach, because you see there's a heter to move something. Even though you were standing still when you held the challah, so it's interesting. Okay, either way, that's the Sameach's heter to carry Muktza. He says it's modelled on Hotzah and therefore has the same limitations as Hotzah. Finally, I did print the Chazon Ish here. I think. Yes, the Chazon Ish says that that even with a kli shemlachta le'issa, where you took it be'issa, it's the heter remains, and he says since afterwards when you want to empty your hands, so you picked it up LeTsorech Makomo, you now want to empty your hands of it. He says that's also a LeTsorech Makomo, and therefore you can carry on moving it. True, you could shake it out of your hands, but you don't find anywhere that LeTsorech Makomo demands niur, demands shaking something off. So again, just to remind you of this halacha, if you have a Muktza machmas gufay, let's say something which is not allowed LeTsorech gufay, you go to your bed and you realize that you've forgotten on your bed something which is Muktza machmas gufay, a stone or whatever. We saw this in the case of the chovis that had on top of it Muktza, for those who remember this. We saw this in the case of the tiltul minatzad, the parsnip which has earth on it, and you want to lift the parsnip out and shake off the earth and so on. We saw concepts of niur, of even Muktza which you can't be metaltal, you can do niur, you can shake it off. Says the Chazon Ish, the whole allowance of tiltul LeTsorech Mekomo is to allow tiltul LeTsorech Mekomo. You don't have to do nior. And as I come to my dining room table and I want to eat my lunch, and I realize I forgot a pen on the table. The pen is klisha melachto le'issa. I don't have to shake it off by shaking off the tablecloth. The whole lomdus of LeTsorech Mekomo is I can take the keli, because that's a use of the keli to take it LeTsorech Mekomo. It's inherent in the chiddush of LeTsorech Mekomo is that you don't need to do nior. Nior is a non-engagement way of moving something. I just flick it off. I shake it off and it sort of falls off. The het of LeTsorech Mekomo is I can do a tiltul of LeTsorech Mekomo. I don't have to do a nior. Why can I do a tiltul of LeTsorech Mekomo? Let's say the svar of the Rashba, because this is one of the uses of a keli that keli is muchan from to move it from its place. If the lomdus of LeTsorech Mekomo is I don't have to do a nior, says the Chazon Ish, why, when I move it away an inch, should I then have to roll up my hands and immediately put it down? The whole point is that tiltul's allowed. So all of this is included in the allowance of tiltul LeTsorech Mekomo, and therefore, or the allowance of tiltul, and therefore I can take it even and put it away somewhere far away. I don't need to shake it off. So he sees the Rashba as just an extension of understanding what the heta of tiltul is. Once I'm tilted, I don't have to do a nior. That's the summary of the view of the Chazon Ish in this allowance. So yes, sorry.
You could argue, maybe you could argue against say that allowance of allowing it to LeTsorech Mekomo only applies when you've got a LeTsorech Mekomo and you didn't move it Be'issa. But if you moved it Be'issa, maybe it wasn't, the Rabbizobin didn't allow such a far thing.
Yes, you could question how far this one extends.
So you have to be near.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, you could very, very well say that. If you pick it up Issa, you have to do a nior, because immediately remove it from yourself. If you pick it back up, or not. Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop here. This has been a little bit of a diversion, as it were, off subject. But our Gemara is very important. And in Mitzvah Hashem on Tuesday we'll start. We'll go the continuation of the Sukkah. Etc. So that's what we'll do. You'll continue the Gemara. So yes. Yes, we'll definitely just shut down the recording for a second.